Thank you for that very fine speech, Troy. Congratulations. We move now back to our paper speakers for the evening. We turn our attention back to the proposition, and we are joined by Chris Philp. Chris Philp was first elected as a Member of Parliament for Croydon South in 2015 and was re-elected in 2017, 2019 and 2024. He serves as the Shadow Home Secretary, having been appointed by the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, having served as Shadow Leader of the House of Commons since the 2024 general election. Chris, you have the ears of the House.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for that extremely warm introduction. When you introduced me just then, it reminded me of the time in 2015 when I was first elected. I'm sure there are lots of people here who are going to be MPs in the future, and you never forget that first moment when you're elected. I remember in the general election count in a big school hall in Croydon. I left the next day as the sun rose over Croydon town centre, and did someone laugh? And I turned to my wife and I said, "Darling, in your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine you'd be one day leaving an election count with your husband, having been elected as a Member of Parliament?" She turned to me and said, "Darling, in my wildest dreams, you don't feature." It's been downhill ever since. Look, thank you. Thank you. A bit of group therapy there. Look, thank you to the opposition for showing up today. It is very telling. There is no Labour minister or shadow cabinet member prepared to defend their own government. And Oscar here has stepped in to take one for the team. Well done, Oscar. I am... Goodness me, the Labour Party shadow cabinet haven't got the courage, but Oscar does. He said we should have confidence in Taylor Swift. I've got to say I've got more confidence in Taylor Swift than I have in the rabble running this country. We had some excellent floor speeches during this debate. I was particularly struck by the one from the gallery evoking Boris Yeltsin. She has painted a picture of the way this Labour government will end. Boris Yeltsin left office in an alcohol-fuelled haze and was succeeded by Vladimir Putin. So that is not a terribly auspicious example. Now, this Labour government came to office, was elected with a landslide in July of last year with huge promise which they made to the country. They said things would be different. Well, the first thing they did is they've destroyed any sense of integrity. As Julian said, an anti-fraud minister who's had to resign because she is under investigation for fraud. A housing secretary, Angela Rayner, who fiddled her housing tax. The homeless minister had to resign for making someone homeless. The transport secretary turned out to be a convicted fraudster. And the US ambassador, Peter Mandelson, turned out to be an associate of a paedophile, something Keir Starmer knew upon his appointment. Apparently, diplomats are people who go out to lie for their country. At least Peter Mandelson had a lifetime of experience which qualified him for that. And one of the first things this government did on being elected was strip winter fuel payments from some of the poorest pensioners in the country. A Labour Party who are supposed to exist to help people who are finding things difficult, stripped winter fuel payments from 71% of pensioners who are in poverty. And then they levied a family farm tax, paid by farmers often making not very much money, so one farm can't now be passed on to the next generation, and some farmers have committed suicide already as a result. But at the heart of Labour's failings in government, I think, is their failing on the economy. Because as Alex said, every single month, they are borrowing billions and billions of pounds to fund their lavish spending commitments. And every single one of those pounds, plus interest, payable at the highest rate in a generation, is going to be repaid by you and your children. This is grossly irresponsible. Yes, I'd happily take giveaway.
You talk about poor economic decisions for the Labour Party, except it was your government that, actually lied to us about leaving the EU and then had the disastrous consequences on the economy subsequently by telling us that we'd have a deal that will boost our economy. Instead, it has cost our GDP billions, hundreds of billions.
Well, first of all, we had a referendum, and it was a public vote, so, I respect democracy. I actually voted Remain in that referendum, by the way, as did David Cameron and George Osborne. We had a referendum. I'm a Democrat, and I accept the results of elections and referenda, even where I'm on the losing side, as I was there. So this spending, this lavish spending, which Labour are engaging in, letting welfare payments grow, 6.5 million of our fellow citizens being paid not to work, is literally insane. Giving pay rises, £10,000 pay rises to tube drivers who already earn 70 grand a year for a 4-day week. The consequence of all of that isn't just money that you're going to have to work hard for the rest of your lives to pay back. It's driving up taxes. In the budget last year, we saw the biggest tax rises in a generation, despite the fact Labour promised they wouldn't increase taxes, and they're going to do the same again in a few weeks' time. And what that does is it suppresses economic growth. It drives successful people away. That means tax revenues go down even more, and they have to come back for even more tax increases, and the whole thing continues in some kind of hamster wheel of doom, leading us towards economic ruin, the way that almost every Labour government in history has ended. Now, when Labour came to office, the first half of 2024, we had the highest growth in the G7. Our economy had produced more unicorns, that's startups that have gone to $1 billion valuation, than France, Germany and Israel combined, a fact that has President Macron choking on his croissant even as we speak. That was their inheritance, and yet growth is now anemic, 0 in the most recent month. The consequences of these economic choices that Labour have made, and they are choices, they didn't have to do this, they chose to do this. They lied about their intentions in advance, but the consequences are that unemployment has gone up by 200,000 since the election. There are 200,000 of our fellow citizens not working as a consequence of the choices Labour has made. Inflation has doubled, most painfully food inflation. And companies are leaving these shores. Ineos, I think the country's largest chemicals firm, has now cancelled all of its investment in the United Kingdom and has relocated it to the United States directly as a consequence, Jim Ratcliffe says, the founder and chief executive, directly as a consequence of Labour's choices. And the pharmaceutical giant Merck, some of you are probably studying biochemistry or chemistry, one of the biggest pharma companies in the world, Merck, had intended to invest £1 billion in this country, an investment they have now cancelled thanks to this Labour government's choices. And successful people are fleeing in their droves to go to places like Dubai. Perhaps the reason Labour don't get this is, unlike many of us, I mean, Gillian, you ran businesses. I set up businesses and ran them 15 years before I became an MP. Some were big, some were not big. Not a single Labour shadow cabinet member, not even one, has ever set up or run a business. And that is why they just don't understand the consequences of what they do. Turns out Rachel Reeves wasn't even a real banker. But she did work in customer complaints, which I guess is probably coming in quite handy now. There is a better way to reduce spending, reduce taxes, reduce regulation, and get growth going. There is a better future our country could have. But that is not the path Labour are on. And the generation that is going to suffer most as a result of this economic incompetence, I'm afraid, is your generation. Because graduate unemployment in the last 12 months has doubled. Because one of the first things companies do if they're feeling the squeeze from higher taxes and higher regulation is they scale back graduate recruitment. I'm afraid you are in the firing line of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' incompetence. Graduate job postings in the last 12 months are down by 33%. Those are jobs that you would otherwise be doing in the next year or two. Youth unemployment has shot up to 14%. And under this Labour government, the average age for a first-time buyer is 37 years old. 37 years old. And the reason we announced plans to cut stamp duty was to help the next generation realise their dream of home ownership. Now, I just want to... Was there a point of information? Up there, yes.
I think it's ironic that people seem comparing about student cost estimate rather than there was a conservative government that introduced linked to university as well as supporting the lower class.
Well, that was... Well, of course, it was the Labour Party that introduced tuition fees, and it was a coalition government before I was in Parliament that increased them. But more people, more students from low incomes than ever before were going to university by the end of the Conservative period in office, which I certainly welcome, and I hope you do too. I'm going to touch briefly on some of the things that came up during the debate. The ECHR constrains our ability to protect our borders. It constrains our ability to stop small boats. Respectable countries like Australia and New Zealand are not in the ECHR. We don't have to be either. Giving away the Chagos Islands is completely insane. The former Attorney General, Jeremy Wright, explained that this is completely legally unnecessary. That is £35 billion that would be better spent helping pensioners and helping farmers and helping businesses. I'm going to just conclude now because I've only got a short time left. We haven't touched on China, but there is the disgraceful case of the government causing a prosecution of Chinese spies to collapse. Starmer is kowtowing shamelessly before President Xi in the hope of an economic deal, allowing him to build a super embassy where espionage will be conducted. They're destroying the academy school system that created opportunity for kids from city backgrounds like my borough, Croydon. And shoplifting is up 20% under this government. So what have we seen, Mr. President? We have seen a government that has whacked up our taxes despite promising not to. It is spending money that we don't have. It is destroying jobs. It is pushing people and companies out of our country. It is reducing your employment prospects. They've shut down the schools which have created opportunity. They are driving farmers to suicide. They're leaving pensioners shivering. They are kowtowing to China. No wonder they're thinking about replacing Keir Starmer with Andy Burnham, a man who believes nothing with a man who believes anything. I'm going to conclude by saying this. Keir Starmer lied to get elected. He lied to the Labour Party, first of all, about what he believed in. He lied to the country about what he intended to do. And he lied to himself about being up to the job. Have confidence in this rabble. I've got more confidence in a second-hand car salesman. So I beg to propose.